Thank you for auditing Professor Skye's Record Review, the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who is still quarantining in his basement. At the end of the video, I will show you my view beyond the camera, which is actually my backyard with all this snow. It's really quite nice. I shouldn't complain. So I'm going to be reviewing the album Palberta5000 by the band Palberta. Now, I don't know anything about this band. Apparently this is their fifth album. I've never listened to them before. I'm not a real music critic after all. I am a real professor of French. I find it interesting because in my limited research, I intentionally keep my research, by the way, kind of vague so I don't allow other people's opinions to pollute my mind too much. But most of what I read talked about how this album is their attempt at being more pop-oriented or more accessible. And if that's the case, that's fine, because this definitely feels like an album with vision, with an artistic vision that's following it, and it certainly doesn't sound like any attempt to sell out. Now, in those reviews that I read, I discovered the following things. One, they're not Canadian. So I'm breaking my streak of Canadian bands. How can your band be called Palberta and not be from Alberta? I don't know. They are most often defined as art punk. I just want to take a second to gently take that term and throw it into the trash. So here we go. Art punk, trash. Okay? Why do I think so? It's such a condescending title. First of all, it's implying that other punk is not art. Beyond that, it's sort of implying that the people who are making this music could be doing something else, but they're intentionally, so risque and doing something below themselves, below their station, and making this punk. I find it insulting to both the term art and the term punk, which are, of course, very amorphous terms, which are usually just defined by the people who are making it or the people who are listening to it. But that's fine. We want to call it art punk. We can call it art punk. I suppose the only way that makes sense to me is that it is music which is intentionally or knowingly minimalistic in some form and trying to achieve something with that minimalism. In this case, it's a minimalism of sort of the way the instruments are put together and the way they sound. Now, perhaps the most interesting thing I learned is that this is a real college band. Now, I am a real college professor, and I have always been astounded at the lack of music in modern American colleges, okay? I blame video games, but mostly I blame GarageBand, okay? I blame the ability of creative people to just sit alone in a room and make music by themselves. So that when I was growing up, every college had 5 bands, and they were all fighting with each other, and one of them was sort of kind of a little bit big, and 1 in 1,000 of them actually made it onto the college radio, right? So they met at this college, Bard College. I did a little bit of research on the college just for fun. Adam Yauch from the Beastie Boys went there, Chevy Chase went there, the guy behind BoJack Horseman went there, and amazingly enough, both members of Steely Dan went there. I was today years old when I realized Steely Dan were not, I thought they were British. Anyways, I'm pissing off Steely Dan fans. My brother and I have a long argument about whether or not Steely Dan sucks. The two sides of the argument are this. I say they suck, and my brother says they don't. My brother is right. I'm wrong about this. Anyways, but it's an interesting thing. When we think about Bard College, which is a lot like the college I went to, a small liberal arts college, much more prestigious than the one I went to, but that's fine. It's a $75,000 a year institution. I'm just going to say that again. I currently teach at a public college, so I can not feel quite as much guilt about the debt that my students are accruing, but a $75,000 a year college. So implied in that is certainly a lot of privilege, a lot of social capital. Okay? But I want to take a second here to just remind everybody that art, until the 19th century, was primarily the domain of the well-to-do, was primarily the domain of the elites in society. And I don't think that's a bad thing now. I personally wish that there were more people who, in this position of privilege, who've been given all the opportunities in the world to just kind of make music and have fun and then go to New York with your band and try to make it like these 3 musicians have. I think we should be encouraging that. What's the other thing they could do? Become investment bankers, get some kind of high-paying job and, I don't know, some relative's company, try to continue ruling the world? Or can they take all that social capital and waste it on something as useless as art and music, which is a beautiful thing and actually contributes to the world? So I want to sort of, if I could say one thing, I do a lot of music that comes from all over the place, I think we should celebrate artists like Palberta or artists like The Strokes, right? So The Strokes all went to the same private, high school, and they all did, and what they did is they ended up using all of that privilege to make art, as opposed to using that privilege to accrue more privilege to oppress others. Now, what do I know? As far as I know, these three musicians might as well have all been on high scholarships. One of them might have been a track star. I don't know anything about them, okay? So I'm making a lot of assumptions here, and like all assumptions, it makes me look like an ass, so that's fine. But I will say that this is sort of my milieu. This is what I remember from when I was a younger man, 20 years ago, the kind of liberal arts college experience. I very much defend the liberal arts college. I very much defend the liberal arts against the tyranny of the useful, the doctrine of the useful. But what this band reminds me of most is a band you've never heard of. You've never heard of them because they were one of these college bands. And they were at a college that I didn't go to. I couldn't go to. A college called Smith College in Massachusetts. At that time, my girlfriend went to Smith, and she had a trio. Mrs. Remote Control. I don't even know if we can find, I don't know if they're on the internet anywhere. They were great, okay? And they made music together, and I gave some drum lessons to the drummer because she was new to drums. And I was in a band throughout college, but my band was never as good as this band. My band was never as good in concert. We never quite had it as much as they did. And they were a fairly successful band at Smith at that time. And I remember at that time thinking, one, I wish I could be in an all-girl punk band. Two, I wish I could go to an all-girl college. I want to describe why this is, okay? This isn't for any kind of Porky's 2, Porky's Revenge kind of reason. I'm not like, yeah, not at all. I couldn't understand it at the time. I didn't know why I wanted this so badly at the time. Only later did I come to understand it. It's not about like men and women being different or better or worse. It's that the female-only environment of Smith, now maybe this is just my perception of it, and maybe it's totally skewed, but it was necessarily missing in what I now understand as toxic masculinity. A sort of belief in bigger is better, a sort of permanent competition, a permanent cutthroat, hyper-capitalist belief in quantity and turgid awesomeness, just right? And I feel like my whole goddamn life I've been surrounded by this feeling. And when I was at college, I was a good college student, I felt that. I felt the competition, fighting, trying to get the best, and trying to get the 4.0, trying to get the 4.0. And as a rock musician, myself, a mediocre drummer, mediocre guitarist, mediocre singer, mediocre bass player, I felt this as well, Like, the thing I hate most in the entire world is going into a music store and trying out a guitar. All of the dudes who work there turn and look and listen and analyze and try to figure out how turgid are my riffs. Are my riffs completely turgid? Semi-turgid? How can we determine the turgidity of this man's gnarly riffs? I think we can actually extend that to the musical experience that a lot of men have playing rock and roll music their whole life, even with the evolution of society, even with the adaptations and the happy integrations of many of the views of feminism as they come into music. I still feel very much that I could not escape this sense of quantitative masculinity curse. Now, all of that comes into the band Palberta, which is three women making music together. And what I hear in this music isn't art punk. I hear the product of being free of even having to deal with that. Having to deal with it, because that's the thing. I mean, of course, we all have to deal with the world of toxic masculinity. No one's free, man or woman. But still, like the freedom that I hear in this music is what makes it punk to me, is what makes it interesting and what makes me wish that I could have been in a band like this. So, 9 minutes in, let me actually talk about the band. I'm sorry, it's the way I do my channel. I like to talk, I like to think. I am curious about your thoughts too. Do you feel the same way I do? Or also, and I really need to make this very clear. First of all, I speak only for myself, not for my institution. Second of all, I like being corrected. I like being called out. I just said a lot of things, and a lot of them probably are going to come across as weirdly sexist or privileged or obtuse or blind. Please, in the comments, tell me how I'm an idiot. That's my favorite thing about this channel. I don't do this to say I'm right. I do this just to say stuff. Okay, so it's a three-piece band, all right? And the thing that I learned that helped me out the most was in an article that explains that they switch up their instruments. Bass, guitar, drums, singing, and they all just interchange. And this is what I love, because none of them are virtuosos, as far as I can tell, at any of these instruments. They are all capable of both playing and, more importantly, writing good things. They all sing quite well. None of them appear to be singing, you know, there's no Mariah Carey, Star-Spangled Banners happening here, right? They all sing well, and essentially what we have is a band of collective glory. A true collective, where you don't know which of the three is doing what when. I don't want to belabor this point, but I'm going to. I guess I do want to belabor the point. You know, this kind of freedom from ego that drives so much music is, I think, what makes it punk and what makes it revolutionary. Even on the cover of the album, which will feature into my thumbnail, I don't know how I'm going to do it, it's just the three of them playing air guitar, a kind of knowing, silly nod to maybe not taking themselves too seriously. I do fear that they don't take themselves seriously enough, because they appear to be, at least to me, great artists who made a great album. But I don't know, maybe that's just part of being free of the pomposity of ego. So the way I describe the album musically is that the guitars and bass are just sort of going all over the place. Like sort of sliding, a lot of sliding up and down. And the thing is this, it's not like chords, and it's not like single notes. I actually brought my guitar, and I'm going to sort of play you what I'm talking about. What they do is these kind of cool, slurry, two-note sounds, okay? Sorry, this is a jag stang. It's very hard to sit with. It's very well designed, unless you want to sit and play guitar, you know? So like, you know, a single note, if we're just going like C to D, would be, all right? And so that would have a clarity to the sound, and that's one way you could play it. Or you could play the full chords, right? What they do is this cool kind of two-note slurry sound where they mute the rest of the strings partially. So it's like, right? So what I'm doing there is I'm sort of like muting the rest there. It's kind of a feel thing, like I couldn't really write it down in tablature, but it makes for the sound where we have lots of bass going up and down and the guitars, right? Just that kind of nice, sloppy sound, which I think is sort of a trademark that we could give to them. The vocals are always interesting, usually with one lead vocal and then the other two backing up in a nice, sweet way. It's not too syrupy, it's quite nice. The lyrics are probably the weakest part of the album for two reasons. One, I can't understand them. I don't, like, the second album in a row where I can't find the lyrics printed anywhere. I don't know, that's okay, that's fine, but I'm interested to read them. And it doesn't seem like the lyrics are super important. The thing that they mostly seem to want to do is come up with a line and create some kind of dirge or some kind of chant based around a lyric. But the lyrics actually remind me a lot of sort of 90s lyrics, kind of like slacker lyrics, you know, like, it is what I want, or that is what it is, or, you know, just sort of like one line here or there that goes on. And I think when they're at their most interesting is when they write a song and then they devolve into a kind of dirge, a kind of repetition, a kind of chant, almost a tribalistic chant. When I think about the way this band makes me feel musically, I think, okay, so the Raincoats are the most obvious example, the most obvious comparison, because I believe they were a trio as well. Early 80s, kind of post-punk, minimalist, female-led band. But actually, I think that's too easy. The band they remind me the most of is kind of early Devo. So before Devo got onto the synthesizers too much, before they produced, like in that kind of punk phase, it's that kind of feeling, which kind of nice sort of syncopated rhythms, interesting things, interlocking, creating something. But really, that's stupid. If I edited my videos, I would edit that last bit out, because I just want to talk about the music now. but I don't edit my videos, I make my videos. My homework for you, if you want to listen to this band and you want to know what they sound like, I had to pick one song, and I'm going to put a link to it, okay? I'm going to put the link up there, all right? So I want you to go and listen to the song Big Bad Want. I'm going to describe what I hear, and hopefully you hear the same thing. Okay? So it starts off in this kind of interesting way with these kind of punkish chords happening, right? And they play pretty strong. The lyrics are about like seeing a horse in the middle of the street. Is this horse supposed to represent like a strong person that the singer wants? It's really not quite that clear, but still it's quite nice in the way that it plays. And then they come in and then they sing the line, which is the line they repeat many times. Something like, I can't pretend what I want. I think that's what they say. I'm not quite sure. They say it 100 times, but I'm still not quite sure what it is. But a great example of the lead singer singing and the rest of them backing it up. Then there's a nice kind of instrumental bridge. And then it gets into my favorite part of the album, my favorite part of the whole album, these weird sort of chants. They repeat it ad nauseum. Yeah, 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 I get what I want. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's almost like a Baroque thing happening here with like counterpoint with the guitars and the bass going up and then the voices and the group voices and all the kind of meshing together into an interesting tapestry. I get it, this band is super simplistic and they're just making punk music, but I don't think I could make this music unless I tried really hard. It's very hard what they're doing. They make it sound sloppy, but it's not sloppy at all. What's cool is the drums are the things that are making it interesting and dynamic. So the drums, so they say the same thing over and over again. The drums, the hi-hat goes from quarter notes to 16th notes. Tick, 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 and that's what makes it kind of interesting. The bass is doing some interesting things here and there. It's a great example of the aesthetic of the album. If you like the album, if you like this song, you're going to like the whole album. They stay in the same lane. They don't go way too far. They stay in this nice zone. Art punk. Whatever. Just good music. So now I'm going to go through the rest of the album briefly. No Way is nice. It starts off with the three of them singing. Great kind of catchy, junky guitar lines that loop together. Simplistic drumming, but really nice melody that pops up. Calling Your Name Out, it's all the same now. Very Kurt Cobain-y lyrics, really. Just kind of, they are able to do that where it has things sound simple, but then a nice melody pops up out of nowhere. Then Big Bad Want, then Never to Go. Very hard to make out lyrics. This is where the early Devo comparisons came to me, which I would have erased. So why am I saying it again, Skye? Another kind of chant at the end. It even kind of drops out a couple times with just voices, which is really quite nice. If I had a criticism, no. Here's a possible criticism you might feel if you desire more song structure. These aren't all songs. Like a lot of them feel like ideas, but they don't quite develop enough into something that we would properly call a song. But that's a stupid, snobby thing to say. Why would you say that? But that is a complaint that could theoretically be made. But I wouldn't make because I don't think they're trying to go for the standard song structure for most of the time. I'll get more into that soon. The Cow is a nice kind of most interesting drum line. This, reminds me a lot of Pavement even at times, just the feel of this particular track, but this is kind of a waltz. Very clearly, this is a different lead singer than the first three songs. I don't know who's who. I don't know their names. Cool kind of droney guitar. Very interesting songwriting, unconventional. I think if you were to actually break down this song in the parts, how it goes, I know, I've been talking for 20 minutes. Why don't I talk for another 10? I just choose not to. But you could take a long time breaking down this song and just sort of reveling in the fact that it doesn't go with the standard songwriting, with the standard methods. It's my father's Boston accent. He says method. And now I'm starting to say it. I'm in my 40s. The standard methods of writing songs, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, whatever. They're doing a lot more interesting things here, which their minimalism is very deceptive. I think you can see that in that song. Fragile Place has an a cappella opening, which is cool. Don't step too close. Then the instruments come in. The vocals are the driving force of the rhythm throughout here, which is interesting. They only have 5 elements, right? Drums, bass, guitar, single vocalist, chorus vocalist, but they all seem to give different weight to different ones on different songs, and that's what creates the kind of dynamism in this track. In Again is voice-led, but singing different things at different times. It gets kind of complicated. The guitar, bass, and drums are like the bass is super low in the mix, so it's basically just guitar and drums. A lot of great things happening here. I don't think I've heard anything like this in a long time. The instruments, very kind of quick changes in mode and tone, a really great track. Hey is not actually a song. It's just them singing over and over again, hey, but it's a nice ditty. Now, weirdly enough, I printed out my notes, but my notes did not actually all print out. I've been having trouble with my printer. So, listen, if this whole album has a kind of DIY feel, don't I get to do that too, right? Why is it only the musicians who get to sound DIY? So I got the rest of my notes on my computer. Somehow they didn't go. Oh, I see why. I printed an old version of my notes. Okay. Next track is called Summer Sun. 1 second, let me actually just, how do I look? I can't even zoom on this. Wow. Summer Sun. I kind of took a break on this song, Summer Sun. I couldn't this album is either tiresomely repetitive or it's very successful in establishing a mood and maintaining that mood. I think that if you're listening very carefully like I was, it's a little bit tiresome. But if you put it on and listen carefully sometimes, but have it on in the background, it's very successful as an album just to listen to. Eggs and Bake is the most kind of punkish song, reminds me a little bit of Dead Milkmen maybe. Another kind of ditty, maybe even something of a jig. I know I'm using these terms like ditty, jig, dirge. They all sound like bad Marvel characters. But it's nice. This has the best example of actual single guitar notes, not those kind of slurry notes that I was talking about before. Corner Store is bass-led. Like I said, they have these 5 elements, and they let different ones take the lead at different times. Nice harmony behind what they're saying. I saw you at the corner store. The simplicity of the lyrics here is okay, who did you see? What does it mean? I can't tell. Something in the Way appears to be the most clear attempt at a normal song. Kind of ethereal mode to begin with the vocals. They appear to be a sort of clarity and snow-drawn beauty. Sorry, there's snow outside. But just kind of a clarity that you don't hear in the rest of the album. But it still doesn't quite develop in the way that you expect. It feels, again, almost intentionally unfinished. The Way That You Do is maybe my favorite song on the album, just because the guitar line is so strong and so nice. Very kind of melodic, another single guitar line here. Sort of a shanty-style drum line, and the vocals are really good. The chorus has this kind of 90s sounding song, almost like kind of a grungy sound. It's really nice, and it creates a nice tension. I would say that this is an interesting example because there's a tension in the relationship between the single voice and the chorus that we don't hear on the rest of the album. All Over My Face is another one that starts off with the a cappella. This is nice, another kind of not quite a full song. They repeat the same thing twice. So they say this whole line about it's all over my face, and then a cappella, then a drum line comes in, and there's a cowbell, and they say it again. It becomes kind of like a funk song. It becomes like a disco song. It's an idea that is done with different iterations multiple times. And then we get to the last track. Hey, Palberta? Is it like Paul Bearer? Is that the joke? Is it like Paul Bearer, or is it like a joke on Alberta? What is the story here with the band name? Palberta. Okay. Ends with the track Before I Got Here, which, hey, Palberta, what the hell is this? Why? This song's amazing. They actually did something totally different. If you're not listening carefully enough, you won't notice how different it is. But it's almost kind of pop punk at the beginning. And then these guitars come in with those kind of cool fakey chords. And then out of nowhere, there are horns. And the intersection between the horns and the guitar and the bass and the drums is just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Breathtakingly beautiful. I know I already told you to listen to that other song, but track down the track Before I Got Here and listen to it. Listen, using horns on indie rock is a fairly common thing to do, and it always is able to create a certain energy to it, which is nice. But wow, is it good here? I don't know, there's something about the restraint where they sort of take the horns aren't playing the whole way through. It's sort of like a call and response. It is just absolutely beautiful, and it just sort of ends with these drums and the horns going, and it's just a great album. So there you go. There's my review. It's a little bit of a take, a little bit of a meditation on the value of music, which is as free from toxic masculinity as it can be. Is that a fair thing to say? Am I pissing you off? I might be pissing you off. It's okay. I come at it from an honest place. So I said I would show you the snow outside. It just stopped snowing, unfortunately, but you can see the. Let's see if I tap there. You see, it's kind of nice out there, right? All right. Well, there's the camera.